What's up, everybody? We are live on Facebook with Dr. Mehlenbacher. How you doing?
Hi.
For all of our new followers, we'll have to pull out the archive videos because you and I did an awesome chat. Was it like over a year ago?
Yeah, it was when I was in Rancho still.
Dang.
2 years ago, probably. I don't know, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you had some amazing information on the kiddos, and we talked about primitive reflexes.
I can talk about that again with this too, actually. Fits in.
Yes, we'll go pretty deep. But first of all, can you tell all the viewers a little bit about yourself and why you're so awesome?
Good question. I am from Austin. I mean, I could sum that up quickly, but I basically got into functional neurology working with children with developmental issues. And then I worked a lot with traumatic brain injury. So I've had amazing mentors just like you in Dallas, and I am now currently in Colorado. My clinic is called Take Root, and that's about all I can tell you right now. We are both, I guess, certified in. Are you certified in traumatic brain injury? I'm not sorry. I shouldn't have said that. So my fellowship is in traumatic brain injury and childhood neurodevelopmental disorders.
Yes, 2 fellowships, and you're a diplomate of neurology. Yeah. So super smart person over here, and obviously loves to read because you have mucho books behind you.
That's the only one of my 3 bookshelves. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's the problem. My dad's like, "You're gonna make me move again."
I'm currently using my nurse practitioner board review book as a stand so that my computer's higher up. So
yeah, it works.
You're doing better than me. But anyways, tonight we're going to be talking about the vagus nerve and the polyvagal theory. And before we get into that, for our viewers on the page, can you tell everyone a little bit about what functional neurology is and how some of our applications that we do for therapy make it a little bit different?
Yeah, I think functional neurology is basically using ways to work with the brain without drugs or surgery. So ways that we know, when you know how the system works, when you know the engineering of the system, you know how you can utilize those systems to help or reinforce certain pathways or calm them down. So we use things like movement, a lot of movement. I think a big concept people don't recognize is that the only reason we have a nervous system is because we are moving creatures. If you look at plants, they have all the same stuff we do, except for they don't have a nervous system because they don't have to move and respond and protect themselves. So we do a lot with movement, exercises. Some functional neurologists get into the laser world and more advanced technology as well, but it's still all non-invasive ways to see how we can rehab the brain, whatever that brain needs.
Awesome. Love it. And a very hot topic in brain rehab these days is the vagus nerve. So can you talk a little bit about vagus nerve, vagal nerve exercises, and also like how functional neurology can apply in the vagus nerve world?
Yeah, I'm going to do a background about the brain because I think a lot of people people talk about the vagus nerve. Even in yoga, they talk about this, but they don't really get what's happening. So I'm going to pull out my poster.
Yes.
From the guy. What's his?
Shout out to Cedric Noel and Jason Whitaker.
Cedric Noel created this, and he's amazing.
The Focus Builder app, people.
All the time. Yeah. So if you're looking for this poster, please contact Focus Builder. I'm sure Brian can provide the.
We'll provide the link. Yeah.
Okay, so just real quickly, if you think of the brain, the easy way to think of it is in 2 spots or 2 parts. So if you think of it, we have the older brain and the newer brain. So the older brain is more of our primitive brain. So everything in the brainstem and those core central things. So if we talk about primitive, we're talking reflexive. These are things that happen before we can even think about it. Our autonomic system that you were talking about is all right here too. So the vagus nerve is in the older primitive part of the brain. The newer brain is more about behavior and performance and finding the way I can do this move with the least amount of energy, right? So the way the brain grows is from the bottom up and from right to left. So if you think of it like a tree, which is why I named my clinic Take Root, you cannot have these blossoming branches of the tree and sprouts unless you have a nice trunk and no roots. So what does our primitive brain mostly do? Well, it's mostly all about safety and survival. This is about behavior. So if we're talking about safety, everything the lower brain is doing and saying, am I safe in my environment all the time? And this comes to balance, vision, inner ear function, and the social engagement system that we're talking about. So the polyvagal theory is basically the cortical, or the more central control of this vagus reaction. So going back to your original question, what's the vagus nerve? In the autonomic system, in the lower brainstem, it's basically where am I getting stimulation on the lower half of the rest of my body. So when I'm in, a lot of people have heard sympathetic fight or flight, parasympathetic rest digest. So it's more complicated than that. But in general, when you're in a fight or flight state, blood goes to my limbs and my muscles, and I'm ready to do something to survive. When I'm in a rest digest state, blood goes to my organs, and I rest, I heal and breed, and all of those good things to get back out of survival. So Stephen Porridge is amazing, and I'm so jealous that you're actually going to hang out with him.
Dude, I'm gonna make sure he watches this, and then we can do.
I'm like, he's so gonna one up me. So whoever's watching this, just watch his.
But he's new to functional neurology, so.
That's true. That's true. I know when I was reading his book, I was like, oh, if he would just talk a little bit more about balance and vestibular, and like, he's like so there. I love it though. But yeah. Anyway, so his theory is that we actually have a hierarchy of vagal stimulation. So our vagus nerve is called the wandering nerve because it basically supplies all of our organs. It supplies our heart, our lungs, everything below the diaphragm. So what his theory is that there's different levels of myelination. And I'm kind of going to go a little more scientific for just a second for like those that care. But he's saying that there's an old primitive unmyelinated version, and then there's a newer myelinated mammal version. So this is something more mammals have established, and this is where our social engagement comes in. So what is our social engagement? It's basically the muscles of our face and neck and eyes and inner ears to be able to engage socially, to say, are you going to attack me or are you cool? So like dogs do this very quickly. If you see dogs, they're like, I'm going to smell you, I'm going to feel you. And like, don't know if you're really cool yet. And then maybe you are, or maybe you're not. But like humans do this real fast, and we do it in microseconds, and it's based off of our brainstem state at the time. So this could be that you are perceiving someone else as uncomfortable and you're sensing that, or you yourself have issues with your inner ear and facial muscles, and you can't tune in with that person to feel, am I actually safe, or do I need to run away? So the next layer of his theory is that if someone can't escape that social trauma, then they shut down and their organs lose function. So this is like being held gunpoint, where you basically like skip that fight or flight phase and go back to parasympathetic, where you shut down completely. And this was okay and back when we were more like reptiles, but because we can't go to that low level of oxygen, because otherwise our organs will have chronic damage. So people with severe trauma this is the theory of why they can have chronic issues with their organs, because they could not escape the trauma.
It's all kind of subconscious in a sense, right?
Yeah, it's reflexive. So it's like something that happens before you can even think about it. So people that have developmental issues and never actually got good control or function over this, they just reflexively are responding. This is where primitive reflexes come in. Actually, reading his book changed my whole perspective of primitive reflexes, because everyone has like an opinion about it. But it was like so solidifying for me. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like you're finally the one that was like, okay, I get it. But yeah, these primitive reflexes come on for babies because they're trying to activate their system. They need to be activated to keep going. Otherwise they'll stay in that unmyelinated parasympathetic state. Well, eventually those primitive reflexes are supposed to be suppressed by, I feel safe with you now, so I'm going to relax. Well, that is where, if they're coming out, then you got to say, okay, why don't you feel safe in your environment? We're going back to the lower brainstem here, or the lower brain, older brain. And there's something reflexively your body's telling you, I'm not safe right now. Maybe my inner ears can't perceive the sound correctly. Maybe I can't perceive that motion correctly, or that sequence of motions. And that's a big thing too. He talks about is intention, which I found fascinating. Like why can we, so going back to the social media thing, like why are we more disconnected than ever, even though we're more connected? It's because we can't tell the intention behind what someone is doing. We don't really know if we're safe. Like what I just said to you, I don't know how you're actually perceiving that, because I can't see you, or right now I can because it's video. but even video is a hypertrophy of auditory and visual, and you're missing the touch and the feeling of actually feeling safe. Mm-hmm. So a great analogy or a trick I like to show people is like, if I'm doing this, you can assume the action that I'm thinking about. But if I actually were to take this
What's in that cup, Dr. Mehlenbacher?
Yeah, you want to know. But notice how you felt when I did that, right?
Yeah.
Because you knew my intention behind what I was doing. Well, how did you know my intention? That's because you've learned this sequence of movements typically leads to this feeling inside of me, and I'm syncing with you, and I'm going to feel what this person feels inside me. So it gets very complicated, right? The higher up we can go. But on a basic level, if you don't feel safe in your environment, you're not going to be able to do the behavior that you want, right? You get that anxiety feeling. A lot of times, there's a lot of ways that you can promote anxiety. Another factor is like social rejection and inflammation, right? We're known to be tribal. And when we were in the wild, if we were ostracized from the tribe, our brain actually goes into inflammation saying, this is not okay, I need to correct my behavior and go back to the tribe. So we actually get the same chemical reaction of inflammation from rejection as we do actual pain. So you release interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor just from someone ghosting you, right? This word that we use. You literally put yourself into an inflammation state. And we're constantly seeking that validation, right? Because we need to know, am I okay in the tribe? Like, am I safe in the tribe? Like, I need that validation. So we're sitting there checking, like, did they like my thing? Did they look at my thing? Like, all the time, trying to get that reward just to feel safe. But it's almost like pseudo connection, right? Because it's not a real connection. I didn't actually feel you and feel safe with you. I kind of like assumed how you feel.
Right.
And we grew up with this, right? I mean, in a way, like, I grew up with the internet, but not really high-speed internet. But it's evolved so dramatically, even in like the last 5 years. It is overwhelming, I think, for all of us to look back and be like, what just happened? And we're so like even more anxious and isolated than we ever have been. And like, what can we do about this?
Yeah.
It's an issue, and it's affecting everyone. I mean, epidemically, they say like 60% of corporations aren't satisfied with the interpersonal skills, and it's very hard for them to find employees that they want to hire because they don't know how to connect with people.
The bosses don't appreciate a text from the third floor.
Right. I mean, my friends actually get mad at me because I call them about like stupid stuff. Like, you called me about this? I'm like, yeah, I did. I'm not gonna text. Like, I text sometimes, but like it's something that you actually have to practice doing. Like, just like how in the 80s we were like, oh, all of a sudden we don't work out anymore, we sit at desks. So they started jazzercise and all these exercise things, right? This all happened in the 80s because we recognized we're doing something wrong here. We need to schedule working out now. So now that's a thing. We have to schedule working out and moving our body now. So, well, now we actually have to schedule connection and shutting off and like shutting this stuff down. And like, if you can't force yourself, you have to force yourself to do it otherwise.
It's so funny you're saying this because I was on a flight coming home yesterday and it was early in the morning and everyone's on their phone, right? Like nobody really talks to each other. Everybody has headphones in, they're on their phone. And so this lady sat in the middle seat next to me and she like sits down and she's all chipper and just starts conversation with me and the other lady next to her. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like someone's talking to me.
Right.
But you could tell the lady next to her was like, why is this freak having a conversation with me? Like, I don't know you. Don't talk to me.
It's so bizarre, but like the fact that you even know what it was like before and to see the difference, like I'm worried about the generation that doesn't even know what it's like to sit in a room and have nothing to do but talk. Like that, right. No distraction at all. But I do think that there is a beauty of this. Like we are advancing dramatically with technology grows, but exponentially, right? So like this information that we've gotten is like, we are like advancing, but we're disconnecting from our human, which makes us our organs literally start to shut down, right? We're not feeling connected, so we're getting these chronic issues and chronic anxiety. And it's like, okay, so I'm not saying that technology is bad and we need to shut this down, but we can't do one without the other. You have to go back to your primitive, your human, and you're connecting with other people and feeling safe. Otherwise, you will never feel safe.
Cool, I love it. Can you kind of talk about, so you met like on the poster you talked about the primitive brain and then the newer part of the brain. Can you talk about like Dr. Porges talks a lot about vagal tone?
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, I could go.
Yeah, I know. I just like for I guess like to be able to have good branches, like how fundamental is the root part of this, like the primitive brain area? How important is a healthy primitive nervous system to be able to build a bigger and better brain? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to ask you about your baby, but so a lot of a lot of this social engagement cues about feeling connected, like our core, like insular, anterior cingulate, like those medial do I like this person? What's my arousal system? Those are most socially, it's more on the right side of our medial centers, like those temporal parietal areas of like spatial awareness. So like I said, our brain grows from bottom up and right to left. So if you don't have that foundation, it's just like a tree, you will literally won't grow those beautiful branches unless you get this trunk stable. Unless I feel stable in space, like I am good right here, my body feels good, my sounds are perceived correctly, my vision's perceived correctly, the people around me aren't scaring me or threatening me, then I can relax and know that I'm safe and to turn on those advanced functions. So really, you can't have this without this. You can have extreme disbalances though. This is like savant people, right? Like people that will go like, and this is, we're kind of going off, but like you can, if we talk about the basal ganglia and like windups, you can push these behaviors to where someone can be dominantly, like you'll see these savant-like Asperger people who have zero social skill, but they're like really good at logical and linear progressive thinking. But if you tell them to do some like fluid dance, they would be like, can't move, right? So
yeah.
Or they might constantly feel anxious and constantly not feel like they can connect with other people. So yeah, they can do that like really advanced programming, but are they happy? Like we got to think about our priorities right now. Like if they're miserable and not happy and socially isolated, then what's the point of that, right? Like what are we living for? So I am curious to ask you, how much have you noticed or used functional neurology with your baby?
Oh, like, yeah, 100%.
Really?
Yeah, all the time. Right?
So how much have you had to stimulate it versus what you initially thought when you didn't have a kid?
So just based on everything that I've read and I, know working with Dr. Melillo and like honestly reading this book too, like Dr. Porges' book, it really did change a lot of my perspective on things.
So everything.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like his book, like some of the stuff is so hard to read. I'm just like, dude, what are you talking about? But a lot of the stuff I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It resonates so much with me and what we've learned. But yeah, for Rowan, I just knew foundationally for people that aren't watching, I guess, if you can just explain a little bit about primitive reflexes, but I knew that like in order for him to be able to build a big, beautiful brain, the foundational centers had to be activated in an appropriate manner. So I was always kind of just checking things, and then we would always engage and do different types of exercises to make sure that we were trying to inhibit slowly and steadily those primitive centers so that he can continue to build the bigger parts of his brain, which I think it's pretty cool because he's speaking now, and he's very engaged in books, and he's very engaged with people. So it's super fun to watch. But yeah, like 110%. That's all I do. And we're the weirdos. What's that? We're like the weirdos. I'm the weird one. Like in our house, there's a trampoline. We have like a pull-up bar.
I would totally do it. If I have kids, I'm going to be like, they're going to have like a little brain gym.
Our entire living room is like a playground. Like we have a slide. We've got like a spin chair. We've got a pull-up bar because he's hanging on. Oh yeah. I mean, when he wants to. I don't go crazy hardcore, but anything that'll activate the vestibular system, the cerebellar, the balance systems. And then we always make sure to take time to read. Like every night, we just read. Just as long as he's having fun, we do it. So
I mean, you brought up the vestibular system too. I wanted to touch on that because I think that's a big concept, especially in our profession, our field. We are kind of like, I would say, the best people to treat vestibular disorders that I've come across. I have yet, not to say that other physicians don't, but I think we are very advanced in that realm. And when you talk about social engaging with your vestibular auditory system, Stephen talks about this, how if you have concussions or blasts or any developmental issue in chronic infections, whatever it is, and your inner ear muscles are weak or have poor tone, then you aren't able to perceive high frequency tones, right? In order to talk to another human, I have to be able to perceive high frequency tones and at the same time feel safe and shut out the background noise, then know that I'm not going to be attacked right now.
Yep.
Otherwise, if I can't do that, I'm not going to tune into you. I'm suddenly not listening to anything you're saying. I'm distracted and I'm hearing everything around me. And these are like these guys that played contact sports repetitively and like just can't tune into your conversation. And I'm constantly distracted. So it's not necessarily that you have social anxiety. You could have an inner ear disorder that's causing you to have trouble actually holding contact with someone. Or you could actually have a spinal issue or an ocular issue that's making your environment seem off, and you're just constantly distracted from what's in front of you, and you can't tune into this human voice in front of you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So even more reason to, there's lots of ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I mean, I actually one day I was like journaling, and I was just like, what is like the number one thing that I use in my clinic? And it's always parasympathetic stimulation, right? Like how many, like across the board, like no matter what, I give it to every single person. So it's to the point where I'm like, we all need to slow down and like chill out and just and connect and like go back to our human selves. And if we all knew, if people knew different ways to activate their parasympathetic system, we can all help, right? Like humming and gargling and carotid massage. And these are things that like just anyone can do. If you have a more severe issue, go see your local functional neurologist. But there's so many little tricks that you can do to help your nervous system and support it to feel safe in a daily basis. I do it all the time. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, I gargle in the shower.
I hum all, like if I'm upset, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go walk over here and hum. Like they won't hear me. And like breathing, all the things. Like, but if you actually know what to listen for, like what is your body telling you? Are you actually listening to it? And are you gonna do what it's asking? Because I think we've come so disconnected from our bodies, we don't really know what it's saying anymore. Someone can go all day with saying, my stomach feels off, I have no idea what's going on. They just are so disconnected. They don't know what it was that they ate. They don't know it. Like we are truly disconnecting from our bodies. Whereas before we would say, we would know exactly what's going on. I need a break. I need to relax, all these things. We're telling ourselves not to. Oh, I have to pee, but I can wait. Like I can wait in a couple of hours. Like we're truly like literally telling our brain like, that's not important. I'm not going to deal with that.
Which
and it's a problem. It's not good, right? We need to listen.
Can you talk or explain a little bit about what primitive reflexes are for people, just so they know?
Yeah.
Like, what that is.
Primitive reflexes are reflexes that come with babies because they need to be activated. Like Dr. Porch says, he's a doctor, yeah. The unmyelinated one is mostly where babies are, but there is a myelinated version when they're born. This is actually a big theory with SIDS.
Sorry, I have to. You're getting people are asking questions, so I'm just looking it up. But keep going.
Oh, are they really? I'm not even following what it's. I hope.
No, keep going. I'll ask you. I haven't pulled up.
Okay, so primitive reflexes are reflexes that babies need to keep aroused, right? Otherwise, they would stay in a parasympathetic state. So things like the grasping reflex. If you've ever grabbed a baby, you know that they just hold on to you. Like when we were in the wild, they needed to hold on to mom.
So it's not because they love you and they want to hang out with you. It's just a reflex. I mean,
if that's what you psychologically need to tell yourself, that's cool. No, but that too, yes, it's all about love. But the spinal reflex, right? You touch a baby and they're super ticklish and all that. The rooting reflex, the Moro reflex, the startle reflex. Adults are walking around with these reflexes and don't even know why. And I know if you look up primitive reflexes, they'll tell you how to rehab them is a lot of core postural stuff. Well, why is that? I wonder why, because it's telling my brain I feel safe in space. I'm feeding my inner ear system. So it's not that like, yes, you have this primitive reflex, do this exercise. It can be a complexity of things for that person, but why is it activated is the question. And that's a signal saying your body's saying, I am being signaled to go into fight or flight by something external, and I have no thought about what just happened. Eventually, we should say, this is actually a nuisance. I can't really write and do fine motor skills if I'm constantly doing this. So actually, I need to stop doing this and do something more complicated and have more complex thoughts. So if I go back to having this, right, or constantly being startled, that is going back to my default network basically, and taking away from what I want to do, my behavior.
Love it.
Kind of answer your question.
Yeah. So is a primitive reflex normal to see in a toddler, in an older adult? Is it normal to have those?
Yes, it's normal. And another factor Malila talks about a lot, I don't think is stressed enough, is that kids go through natural regression periods. So there will be times where that reflex may come out and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's your body's trying to activate itself and learn its own environment. And until that turns on to the point where it's like, okay, I got this, I know where I am, I'm cool, then you can do those higher advanced stuff.
Cool. Okay, so now can we talk a little bit about vagal tone?
Vagal tone.
Just like why? So we've gotten into vagus nerve, the primitive systems. why is vagal tone so important? And how does that lead into what we were talking about with the disconnection, even though we're super connected with
Yeah, so
social media?
the vagus nerve is complicated. That's why it's like the vagal complex, because it can be toned by many different stimulus. A lot of these stimulus come together and converge in the brainstem and say like, okay, we're gonna create this whole network. So the spinal system goes in there, the inner ear system goes in there. So a great way that I tell my patients or to test their own vagal tone is just do a deep exhale. So if you inhale for 4 and then hum for 8, like if people that have low tone are like, they can't control their diaphragm at all, right? So that's an example of you being able to say like, oh, maybe I have poor diaphragmatic tone. We also sit all day and we don't actually use our diaphragm to breathe anymore. So that's another way. You can check with your, if you're asking like functional neurology wise, there's lots of ways to check how your autonomic system is doing, actual heart rate, pupils. You can check based off your, if you're sweating a lot, if you get lightheaded when you stand up fast, if you get cold hands and feet, a lot of those are big signs of poor vagal tone. I used to get lightheaded so bad when I stood up and I thought like, oh, this is just a normal thing. I just drank too much or whatever, like when I was in college. And then I'm like, oh, I actually had terrible vagal tone. And like, now I know what that means. So I hope, does that help answer it, guys?
Yeah, just like the importance of, from a functional neurology perspective, I'm always just thinking about like how healthy or how strong is the vagus nerve. And like you said, when you do your therapies, it always goes back to activating parasympathetics and doing types of vagal nerve exercises to help the brain be better.
Well, and just get a history of their symptoms. Like, are they having any issues with their organs? Like that's right then and there, you have to know that your brain is being affected by that, because most of our feeling of serotonin and safety comes from our gut and our organs being cool, right? If they're cool, then I'm like, oh, okay, I feel good. This is why we eat, to feel better. This is why we like grab our stomach when we don't feel good, because it's our if you can go through their symptoms and like, yeah, I got IBS. I'm like, okay, maybe there was a trauma that you couldn't escape and your myelinated system shut down. Or unmyelinated. Actually myelinated. So you went into your unmyelinated version. You went into that dorsal motor, lower diaphragmatic organs, versus someone that has like rapid heart rate or shallow breathing and they get like I can't. They're more of like this ventral vagal social engagement. So their issue is more of this mammal social engagement, versus this person might have more chronic trauma that was never addressed, or just trauma physically that wasn't addressed, like infections, and things can happen from our environment, as we all know.
For sure. Can we talk a little bit about anxiety?
Are these questions people are asking, or are you just asking?
Oh, I'm just asking. I'll ask you these people.
Yeah, anxiety is I love when people use terms like anxiety and ADHD, because I'm like, what does that actually mean? Can you tell me? But yeah, what is anxiety to a lot of people? It's a physiological feeling of needing to move, right? Like, I need to get out of this, or your heart rate goes and you're shallow breathing. Like, so it's all these systems that I was describing. So if I don't feel safe, then I'm going to first look at my social cues and say, do I need to escape this? And this is like the people that just will like avoid the situation. Like, I'm just going to go, which is actually good. You listen to your nervous system, but now go recognize that you did that and go seek someone out for rehab so that doesn't keep happening. But leave the trauma if you want to. And then I actually can escape like mass shootings or these major traumas that happen to people where they literally shut down because they cannot escape. So then it becomes permanent, and their organs had such a lack of oxygen during that time that it might not go back to where it was. And then my insular and my singular cortex and those really central areas of my brain that let me know my body is safe are always going to be affected then from then on, and they're going to remember that trauma. So anxiety is like, when I read the polyvagal theory, I was like, this is anxiety. Like, this is, but like there's a lot of factors with anxiety, because that's why we're putting a word on something that's not in one spot, right? So like we're wanting to say like, this is where anxiety is. But you can also have depression like anxiety, which is more of a frontal lobe issue. You can have inflammation-induced anxiety, right? So chemical-induced anxiety, but it's still going back. Even if you have inflammation or a chemical issue, it's still going to affect the system, and then it's going to affect your brain, right? This is why it's bidirectional.
Yeah. What role does social media play in all this?
Yeah, I think
talked a little bit about it earlier. But
yeah, social media is a blessing and a curse, right? It's like the definition of where our brains have become. I think the word ghosting is like goes to show you how mature our communication level is at this point. Like we've decreased our communication skills, and we are feeling it physically. Our body is telling us this is not cool and I don't like it. So we might feel connected, but how many people, and they've done surveys on this, I don't even have to like ask who's ever watching, if people are watching. Everyone can tell, like no one actually enjoys this anymore. They just do it out of like reward addiction. Like I just need validation. I just need to like make sure that my people are still there. Is my tribe still there? Like those are like, we don't really enjoy it. Like that's the thing, you need to like step back and be like, if you were to turn off your phone, this is a real thing. A lot of people think if I have to turn my phone all day, that would make me anxious. Like that would make me more anxious. And I'm like, no, try it. I swear to God, try it. Turn off your phone all day. See how you feel at the end of the day versus when you had it on. I promise you, you will feel so much more relaxed and in your body and in tune. And if we don't recognize that we need to actually intervene and step out of this, just like we recognize that we need to intervene and work out and change our diet, like we will be taken over by this. And just like, I don't know if you watched the Elon Musk and Joe Rogan podcast on that. Did you watch that?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. You should watch it. but Elon Musk talks about this concept of how we're disconnecting from our humanity. Literally, we're going technology, computers are just extensions of our left brain, right? But that doesn't mean that we can just go into this cyborg of left brain. This is why TV and screens work to an extent, and video games work to an extent, but you're still hyper focusing on the visual and the auditory, and you're not touching, right? It's like when you do sound meditations. The guy I studied sound meditations under, he really focused on like, you can't just put a speaker on or put something in your ears to listen to that tone, because our brain perceives it from all angles. It perceives the frequency, velocity, the speed of all of those sounds, and we can't perceive that from going straight at me. So there's still a level of disconnect, even with a great example. One of my friends, Soraya, who I love, she's a relationship coach, but she talks about how she works a lot with men that have issues now with erectile dysfunction and why that is. And like, she sees them, especially our generation that grew up with high-speed internet porn, right? They have a hypertrophy of getting off to the auditory and the visual, and they can't control the touch anymore, like at all, right? So like, it's an issue, and you see it and we can say like, okay, it's not that big of a deal, but like, it is now becoming an issue. We have an epidemic of people that are just not happy. They don't feel safe. They don't know how to connect. They're feeling isolated, and it's causing their brain to react, and they're getting chronic issues.
It's crazy. I guess even on more levels than I knew.
Yeah, I can talk about all topics if you want.
I didn't know you were going there.
Alex, if you want. No, it's
scared. No, I was kidding.
But it's real. I mean, it's something that our generation is affected with more so than the previous, because they didn't grow up with high-speed internet. So it's like, this is something that we've never even like had to wrap our head around until now.
Right. I remember, do you know Mike Longyear, Dr. Longyear?
Yes, I love it. He was my what do you call it? He tutored me for biochem.
Oh yeah,
I love him. I swear awesome. He made me get an A in that class.
He, a lot of the patients when we worked together, he would make sure like, and I think he learned a lot of this from Dr. Hall, but he would have patients that did have anxiety, and did have like some other issues that were kind of in the world of depression, anxiety. He would ask them like, hey, do you have a group of girlfriends, or do you have a group of guy friends that you regularly spend time with? And they're like, no, I really don't, or I did, but we don't hang out a lot because life's too busy. And one of their exercises for at home was basically to just go out for a walk with a friend. And it was crazy because I was talking to some patients, and they're like, that is the single most best thing that I did.
Yeah.
All the other exercises help, but like to be able to engage with one of my best friends and spend time with them, that was one of the best things I did for my brain.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's crazy how much we crave it now compared to before. Like, I find myself like, I want to like plan all the travel things with my friends, like let's hang out. And we're doing it more and more because we're like, we feel it. We're feeling this effect now. And for the people that have a good social engagement system and have a level of anxiety where they can address it and force themselves out of it, there's a lot of people that cannot even go there. Like the thought of forcing them to talk to someone is just like pushes them even further to fight or flight. So those are the people that really need their nervous system assessed in a different way, right? Like maybe you should see a functional neurologist. If you can't even get to the point of like, I'm going to force myself to go on a walk with my friend, then you need to get help, right? We are tribal. We have to help each other feel safe. You're not going to be able to do it alone.
And it may not be that you necessarily don't want to. It might just be that primitive
and it might
reflex
push
that
you
you can't.
further into sympathetic. This is like the dive reflex, like go take a cold shower. Like it is definitely going to put you into fight or flight for a second. But if you are unstable or you've had that level of trauma, that might not be the best therapy for that person.
Sure.
Whereas maybe they just need to start with some upper ventral vagal things like humming and breathing and those things before they go into something that's that deep.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, let me, hold on. Can I ask you some questions? People are...
I'm curious if people are even watching this.
Yeah, you got some peeps. So someone asked, can hypoperfusion come from anxiety? Hypoperfusion.
If you're talking about the autonomic system, you're talking about the flow of blood, right? Or if we vasoconstrict or vasodilate. So if you are having issues getting blood, like if I am going to pick up this cup, my brain's already pushed blood to my hand to do it before I even did it. So if you have issues, again, going back to your how do you know if you have poor vagal tone, you're going to have to get assessed by a functional neurologist, but there are ways to connect that system for sure, yes.
Yeah.
But it might be secondary to something else triggering it, right? Recognize that this is not necessarily a primary issue for people. It could be because of a chronic effect that your body's like, hey, this isn't cool. Your body's talking to you right now. I don't like this situation, but whatever that situation may be for each person could be different.
Sweet. Yeah, and I always say too, like, if you are, just at the very like basic level of sympathetic versus parasympathetic, which I know it goes way deeper with the polyvagal theory and polyvagal system. But if you're in an anxious state, that's almost more of a fight or flight state where you're going to shunt blood to muscles and organs that are going to kind of increase the ability to be able to flee the scene. So you may not have the cognitive fortitude to be able to do it because you're just not getting perfusion to the higher levels of the brain.
Exactly. If you're not getting blood to your hands and feet, you're not getting blood to your brain. It's the same.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, everyone else is just basically posting to give us a hard time.
Oh, really? Who is it? I want to be a part of this.
You've got Dr. Devin Gaston. She just checked in.
How do I see it? I don't even see it.
I know, I had to pull it up on my phone. Dr. Brock, he said, go Blue Devils. And then Dr. Trayford tuned in. He said, what's up?
I'll see you in Israel. I'm so excited.
Oh, you're going to Israel?
Yeah, I leave.
So we'll wrap things up because we know that people have to get off of the computer and go socially engage with their friends.
Right? I have to go home and do yoga.
You have to go home and do yoga, but what can you kind of tell us what you're up to, how people can find out a little bit more information about you, and you do see patients over the internet, so how they can connect with you?
Yes, I have started seeing more and more patients remotely.
And talk about your master classes too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I started a autoimmunity masterclass a while ago just because I had such a load of people that I was repeating myself to, and it worked really well. So I had some moms that asked me to do one on developmental delay. So I decided to just consolidate into a general brain class of basic concepts of ways to test this system. Like I was mentioning, like there are so many nonverbal cues our bodies are giving us that we just don't know how to communicate with or what that actually means. So I give you like a list of how to self-assess, and then if potential exercises to do, and if you need actual consults and referrals to people and specialists, then we talk about that too. But I am trying to get this, the point of this is that it's not just these severe injuries that need help. Like the average person, the average anxious millennial can do a lot to support their system without going and spending money on a doctor.
Awesome. And then, yeah, what's up with Israel? You're going to Israel?
Yeah, I'm presenting at the Movement and Cognition Conference.
What?
I'm so excited. I'm like really excited to go.
That is awesome. What are you going to be presenting on?
My topic is why the body's oldest systems are the key to solving our newest problems. So kind of like what we talked about. So I did a study on a few people completely remote. So everything they did was self-assessed and self-done. We just consulted. So my whole point of this is to get where we really truly can get away from technology and say, I can do this as a human, and everyone can empower themselves a little bit more and be a little bit more human.
Love it. Well, that'll be fun. Yeah, we'll have to somehow find out more about that. Well, we can post it for any of our Israel peeps that are on here.
Yeah,
And
I'll try.
then,
I'll
and
bring
then,
back any information I can.
yeah. And then, yeah, we'll just like put your phone in the back and live stream it from Facebook. I'm sure
I'll get Trayford to do it. He can record for me.
yeah, we'll get Trey for to do it. And then,
I still don't see where this is. I want to like see people. Oh, okay.
it's on the page.
You just said, all right.
Brock made a comment
Brock,
about,
don't talk about drugs to me. I
yeah,
don't want to get into that.
And then can you tell how do we get in contact? I'll make sure I put up the link, but best way to contact you.
Yeah, my website for sure. Or I can post a link actually. I have a link that'll connect you to actually get a consult with me. So I'll put both.
Cool. Or they can just ring the doorbell at the office so that they're socially engaging.
I have a whole list of ways to shift from this dorsal motor to ventral vagal calming systems. There's so many things people can do on their own. This is why yoga works, because we're just letting my proprioceptive system know where I am in space.
Huge. So for people who aren't super bendy and haven't gotten into yoga, can you give like the viewers just one thing that you would recommend trying to start doing at home to activate more of that mild pathway? Just one. You have to pick just one.
I have to pick one? Okay, breathing. Breathing. Breathing is like the best. And you want to extend your exhale. So the exhale is parasympathetic. Inhale is more of that emotional, right? So focusing on the exhale. Another thing I want to mention, because I just
wait. How do we do the breathing though? You said like how many breaths in, how many breaths out?
So I always tell people double your exhale. So if you inhale for 4, exhale for 8. If you inhale
Does it matter like breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth? Does any of that matter?
Starting out, just focus on getting the air in, but eventually try and do it through your nose. It is more of a limbic effect.
Okay.
Effect. But then I say, if you're having that poor diaphragmatic tone, do the humming and gargling water to help increase that.
Dude, you're choosing more than one. You're choosing more than one.
I'm sorry, but I want to say one more thing because I fell in love with this. I know, but I feel like everyone should do contact dance. Like,
what is it called?
Have you heard of that? Contact dance.
No.
Oh my God, it's such a game changer. Like I cried, I laughed, all the things. Like it like makes you. It's like therapy dance. Like it makes you like have to engage with people, and like if I'm like even coming to the camera, you're like, whoa, like you got a feeling from that, right? So it's like this, but you're like doing it with people and like making eye contact, and like sometimes some of the stuff is like all with yourself and like internal, but so therapeutic. And like if I could stress one thing, it's touch. Like we need to touch each other again. I know it sounds like bad, but like or touch yourself. Like the touch part is
healing
such a
touch
factor that's missing, and movement, touch and movement are such of the factor that I'm like want to drive home today.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. So, just basically being more socially engaged. The, what is it called? Contact dance?
Contact dance. Look it up.
But you don't actually touch. You kind of just like get in their face.
No, you can touch. Like, so it depends on like what level, like some of the things.
Oh yeah,
like,
contact.
Some of them are like, you have to like put all your body weight on them and like feel how that feels. Like there's so many different techniques, but it's so, I'm telling you, when I walked out of there, I was like, everyone needs to do this. It was like the most therapeutic experience.
Did you do it with a bunch of strangers?
Yeah, strangers. Like you stare them in the eye and you're like, you don't have to, obviously. Again, this is all invited social. If you are into any forced social situation, don't do it. But if you are inviting this social situation, I mean, you go in there. I think of how many times, like you said, everyone's like sitting there on their phone all the time, not making eye contact. But if you're forced to be like, I'm gonna look you in the eye for like a good 60 seconds, like you're gonna give that person a hug at the end to be like, dude, let's hang out. That's exactly what I did. Like we became friends with everyone. Like it's totally, it's like, I love it. I think everyone should do it. Also, go see your local functional neurologist and get your nervous system assessed and eat right. There you go.
You just said 13 things.
That's my advice. I know, okay. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
No, I'm just kidding. Ross Solis said he hearts breathing.
I love Ross. Hi.
Angel just popped on, but Angel, you can catch your recording totally because Dr. Mehlenbacher's got some yoga to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Can you hang tight? I'm going to end the recording. Everyone, thanks for tuning in on Facebook. And tomorrow night, Dr. Brock, if you signed up for our monthly brain chats, he'll be covering pandas. So that's going to be not that animal, but yeah, we're going to be doing pandas. He'll be going over the neuroscience and some neuro rehab strategies for it. So it'll be fun. But we'll catch you guys there, and then, yeah.